Whenever my friends visit New York and ask me to show them the city, I pull out a subway map and mark the stations connected to famous people. Everywhere you look, someone's face appears on a building, a whiskey bottle, or a beauty product. Tiny invitations into the city's endless stories. Yet for years, I've searched for traces of Ukrainian writers and artists who immigrated here and made New York their home. Too often, I find only fragments from their time, an old object, a forgotten reference, rather than a plaque on a building, a poem on a card, or artwork in public view. One of the most requested stops is the Carrie Bradshaw building in Greenwich Village, where visitors line up for photos. The actress who played her, Sarah Jessica Parker, is often seen carrying books, including one about Chernobyl that caught my attention. I dream of the day that Ukrainian literature becomes just as visible, and when a celebrity turning its pages helps bring those stories to a wider audience. New York is as much a city of books as it is of long-lost friends or relatives, separated by war, waiting to be found in the archives. In 1999, I returned to Ukraine for the first time since leaving. I carried a camera everywhere and recorded a lecture at the Ukrainian Insurgent Army Museum in Slavsko, a small town in the Carpathians. Before we left, the elderly guide, knowing we came from the United States, handed me a piece of paper with an address. Write to her. You'll love her story. I never did. I bought the book, but it sat unread on my shelf for 27 years until a week before a book presentation about Kuk, the last general of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. I thought I had plenty of time to learn the names and events, but I soon regretted not reading it earlier, not only to understand the story, but to thank its author for writing one of the best books I've ever read. Perhaps I was afraid of another book about war, about the sacrifices of my countrymen, and about history. I felt unprepared to understand why it is so difficult to defend the right to exist as a Ukrainian, let alone the identity of an entire oppressed nation. Today, I believe this book is essential for anyone wondering how to survive far from home. There's no glamour in its pages, but there is no bitterness either. Instead, you'll meet people who could not send their children to school because a family of 10 shared one pair of shoes. And you begin to question how we, surrounded by endless choices, have forgotten to make room for their stories and translate more Ukrainian literature for the world. Maria Savchin Pyskir's Thousands of Roads follows a young woman born in a small village in western Ukraine, who grows up looking up to her uncle's affluent family living in Peremyshl area, who stand a rung above her family in the social hierarchy. She dreams of attaining a higher education and expanding her understanding of the world. She's fascinated by classmates from different ethnic backgrounds whose lives are reshaped as borders shift between Ukraine and Poland. Just as today's girls are captivated by TikTok, schoolgirls in the 1940s copied tango lyrics in foreign languages into notebooks, saving to sing them on the long train rides home. As a teenager, she witnesses the arrests and murders of her peers by the Soviets, fueling her determination to help her people survive. But when Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union in 1941, she joins the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists as Ukrainians were rounded up for forced labor in Germany. Her conversations with people from Eastern Europe she meets in train stations feel strikingly familiar. How is it any different today? Throughout the memoir, Maria rejects stereotypes, believing instead that there are good and bad people in every nation. She recounts moments of fear and humanity alike. Neighbors too terrified of deportation to open the door, alongside prison transit guards whose silent glances reveal compassion. In their eyes, she sees admiration for the freedoms of the West, mixed with embarrassment, as they compare their worn work shoes with the polished boots of West Berlin border guards. Imagine that, at the same time, Hollywood actors playing war heroes rested on boards, so-called rest chairs, to protect their elaborate costumes from wrinkling between scenes. Across the ocean, women like Maria slept on damp hay over wooden boards in freezing winters and tore apart their only wedding shirts for bandages. After years in the bunker, Maria understood that a song about war could never capture the reality of living through one. Her story is filled with painful ironies. Driven by patriotism and a desire to educate the poor, she immediately becomes vulnerable to the unwanted advances of the first older men assigned to supervise her volunteer work. Later, while hiding in the woods, she also endures condescension and mockery of men unsettled by her intellect. In moments of self-reflection, she may admit to sometimes being too trusting, but she is never naive, despite recognizing the quiet inequalities of gender, class, and power that shaped her journey. She never loses faith in people. That humanity is what makes her story so compelling. The memoir is rich with memorable personalities. Marichka admires thoughtful and brave newcomers whose intelligence and logic behind their life choices command respect. The underground is portrayed as a community that valued world literature, art, and discussions as much as military training. She writes movingly about the graphic artist Nil Khasevich, whose woodcut prints became powerful propaganda despite his disability, and reflects on how Russian literature revealed a country with two faces, both an oppressive empire and a civilization of profound cultural achievement. As Soviet-controlled titans, Maria recounts collectivization, betrayals, propaganda, and the death of Roman Shukhevich before her own arrest alongside her husband, Vasil Halasa. The story then shifts from the underground to Soviet prisons and interrogations, where both refuse to betray their comrades. One unforgettable exchange comes when KGB officer insists that there is no situation from which one cannot get out, to which her husband replies, "You forgot to add that one must leave it with honor." Throughout these experiences, Maria reflects on language, identity, and freedom without ever losing sight of beauty. Even after persecution, imprisonment, and exile, she returns to the idea that beauty lifts the soul towards heaven, reminding readers that humanity can survive even in the darkest circumstances. Maria's voice is thoughtful, resilient, and deeply honest, making this a must-read for anyone interested in Ukraine's history, women's experience in war, the moral complexities of resistance, and above all, how to tell a story that ultimately affirms the beauty of life.